there and welcome to TechThings. This channel is going to be devoted to, well, lots of junk. But seriously, it's going to be dedicated to just kind of little projects I'm going to be working on, such as this thing, which I'll go over a little later in a different video, and technology I find interesting. This has been covered in several other videos, the Philips DCC deck. This I'm sure has as well. This is a Pioneer quadraphonic receiver, the QX8000. Not the best quadraphonic receiver you could pick up in the 70s, but they were one of the best manufacturers of stereo equipment in the 70s, bar none. This is a PowerBook G4 Titanium. TechThings is going to be about technology I like talking about and looking at and fixing. As you can see, there's a parts machine here in the background. This is a 667 megahertz, and it's pretty much junk. The motherboard is fried. I think it won't power up even with a good battery. I tested with the one from this one, which is an eBay find. I'll go into that in a little more detail. But as most of them has the peeling paint on the wrist rests, you can see it very in detail there. There's quite a bit peeling off there. So it's pretty much toast. My camera will focus, there we go. The screen's not in terrible shape, but there is some peeliness to it. Just not a terribly great example of this particular model. So my mission was to find one that was. And here it is. It is an 867 megahertz model. And the PowerBook G4 Titanium in general is probably my favorite laptop. My favorite portable of all time by any manufacturer. It started my... I tend to lean towards Apple in terms of technology. I started out as a pretty staunch PC user. I spent a lot of time on anti-Apple websites back in the mid-90s. The heyday of anti-this and that GeoCities websites. But I entered high school in 1999, and in 2000, actually 2001 rather, I joined the AV club, and a buddy of mine was a big Mac head. And when this was introduced, he wanted one, and he got one. And it blew me away for this reason, almost exclusively. No PC laptop at that time could do this. It's up and ready to go. Now, this particular model may not be, because I've done a modification which we're going to troubleshoot here at some point, because I don't think it was entirely successful. It was on a few levels, but as you can see, it is not responsive right now. It may take a minute or two to become responsive, or it may not even become responsive. When I got this, it had a 40 gigabyte, 4200 RPM PATA hard drive in it. This is an 867 megahertz model. It came with 512 megs of RAM, and as you can see, the spinny beach ball of death is still wreaking its havoc. So I decided that I wanted it to be faster and have a little bit more capacity. And there are a few routes with these to go. The first one I did was, and I don't think it's going to recover from this, so I'm just going to go ahead and do the nuclear option here. Wow, that really messed with the white balance. The one I took was I picked up a cheap PATA to SATA adapter on Amazon or eBay, I can't remember which at this point. And to which I attached a modified SanDisk, 120 gigabyte SSD. And the one thing with this SSD was it was in my PowerMac G5 previously. So I literally took it out of that and put it into this. And it boots right up into Leopard, which I installed on that SSD. Actually, I cloned it from its previous SATA spinny drive. I call them spinny drives. It's stupid, I guess, but it boots. And if you don't put it to sleep, it works all right. It's a little bit slow because it's only got 512 megs of RAM, and as you can see, once in a while, it just kind of loses its mind, which is why I don't think the SSD was quite successful. And I'm not sure if it's the install or if it is simply the fact that it's using a painted SATA converter. I was initially going to get an SD card painted to SD adapter, but I decided against that, just simply for simplicity's sake. My next, I think the ultimate goal here is to get an IDE SSD and just grab something off of Amazon. The speed, once it gets done booting and finishes up what it's doing, is actually not too bad. Safari tends to run better. It should not be indexing. I don't know why it's indexing. It wasn't before this, but whatever. Maybe it got corrupt. Sometimes, I guess, and that's another thing. I'm kind of wondering what the painted to SATA adapter is doing to the performance, and to the data integrity, I guess, because it does all right, but every once in a while there's a quirk. I haven't been using it too much because it's frankly painful to use at the moment, and it only works up to a point. And as you can see back here, I have my USB Netgear stick, which provides 802.11g, because the stock card in here was an airport 802.11b card, which is incompatible with any modern networking. I have upstairs, this is my basement, I have upstairs a Airport Extreme N box, so that serves up the wireless to this house. And as you can see, it's now beach balling again, so I think that, oh no, wait a minute, there it is. Yeah, every once in a while it gets a wild hair, but I think that it might also be memory, which I have two 512 sticks of PC-133 on their way. You just have to wait for them to arrive. They probably will arrive tomorrow. Today's Sunday, tomorrow's Monday, and I ordered them last, I think, Wednesday, so I think they'll arrive, and I'll make a video of installing them. Such as it is, it's not terribly hard to install them, but I think that the speed will increase with that. I may just decide to scrap the install and reinstall Leopard from scratch, which on this, because the drive is, and of course I don't know why I'm showing this to you, because you can't tell what drive it is by looking at that. So let me be a little more demonstrative here, which I don't think that's going to quite work if I do it that way, because Safari is now freezing too. The rest of it does a pretty decent job of multitasking, because I can still use the Finder even though Safari is taking a shit. I'll open up System Profile and I'll kind of give you a little bit of a tour of this machine. Yeah, see, there it goes. It just does what it wants, really. So it is a G4 15-inch PowerBook 3,5, whatever that means to you. 867 megahertz. Number of CPUs 1. And here you can see the SanDisk SSD. Protocol ATA, which it's obviously not an ATA, but in any case, disk burning. I think it's a CDRW drive. I was a little disappointed because it was advertised as a super drive, but it's not a huge deal. I have quite a few IDE DVD drives that I can use. What I did when I installed, I had a 4200 RPM 40 gig drive that I put in here, and it had no operating system on it. But what I did was I basically popped the bottom case off and attached the pop-out drive to the laptop temporarily and just had it kind of sandwiched underneath here, and installed Leopard, and then removed it and put the virtual CDRW. Maybe that's there's probably a lot of software on here from when it was. I have a PowerMac G5 dual 2.3 upstairs, which this drive was in before, and I think that there may be some other software on here that's kind of running in the background that I'm not. I've had that thing forever, so I don't even know what was on it. So it probably was not the ideal candidate to swap into this computer and try to use in any capacity, because it's so much faster even than this. But I think the project will be, I guess, to remove the Matsushita at some point. I think it's Matsushita. And put in a super drive. Come on, focus. There we go. So, apologies for the roughness of this first episode. But generally, as an example, we'll be doing little projects on this channel. I've watched quite a few different tech YouTube channels and enjoyed them, and I kind of want to contribute. I'm not sure if anything I say or do will be interesting, but I'll have fun doing it and feel as if I'm contributing. This machine in general is in fantastic condition. I picked it up for a song from eBay. As you can see, the main problem with these machines is not shown here as on the parts machine that's lurking in the background. You can see that the wrist rests are in almost immaculate condition. There's a few little spots of dirt, but that is to be expected. The person that owned this machine before, I think, was an older gentleman. It looked as if he had it looks as if he's taken very, very good care. These hinges are in fantastic condition. The lid is very stiff, but I'm being very careful with it. It's so nice. I don't want to daily drive it, but there's this temptation to make it functional and take it out and be all hipsterish and pull a PowerBook G4 out of my bag and at my wife's college and look all a hipster. So the only real flaw on this machine is the lid. Has just the slightest bit of, if I can focus here, you can see right there, it's just the slightest bit of a dent right here. But in general, I'm very happy with the condition of this machine and I almost don't want to do anything with it. I would just as soon have it sit on my shelf as a great example of my favorite laptop ever. And I don't know why. It just has so much character. It was the first of its kind in a lot of ways. From the widescreen to the full-size keyboard. I mean, that's not a first, but the keyboard is absolutely fantastic, by the way. I don't know why. I'm not technical enough to explain why. It's just very pleasant. The speakers are not really much to write home about. The trackpad is competent, but not special in really any way. It's inconvenient because you have to have a wireless stick to use it. You can't put an Airport Extreme card in it. The battery is suspect. I think it probably needs replaced. It goes to about 60% and then just unceremoniously shits the bed. So, and now it won't go to sleep. The fan is spinning. But in any case, the goal, I guess, of this particular, now it's finally going to sleep. This particular project is going to be, you get this thing, in working order. I've already taken a few steps. The SSD is a good start. I think it just needs to be reformatted and re-imaged. Have Leopard reinstalled on it. But this is going to be the first video of TechThings. I do a lot of thrifting. I do a lot of Craigslisting. I have tons of crap. The only reason all that stuff's over there is because we had some work done on the basement. And I had to move a bunch of stuff really quickly. So it doesn't normally look like this down here. But as you can see, this is kind of a general overview of the kind of things I collect and the kind of things I want to make videos about. I wouldn't mind doing some interesting stuff for the DCC deck, but I don't have a working one. This one does not work. This is really cool. It's covered in concrete dust at the moment because they did some concrete work down here, and well, it gets everywhere. I'm going to make a video about this. This is what I was going to use to record this video, and ultimately decided just to use my phone for the moment. The audio and video will improve, but I wanted to get something up as I started the channel, and just kind of want to put a taster up. So when the Vrame arrives, I will make a video about that. And I'm going to do some research on the best way to implement an SSD in one of these. And it even comes right up when you open it up, even after putting it to sleep. It's when it goes to sleep for a long time that it becomes the problem. And see, it even came up and is detecting stuff on my network. Well, it just sat for a couple minutes, but see, Safari, it still doesn't like Safari. I wonder also, because it gets very hot using it, I wonder also if the thermal paste needs to be redone, which I'm not entirely sure I want to fool with. I think that I want to, the first steps I'm going to do is I'm going to put 512, the two 512 sticks in here for 1 gig of RAM, max that out, and then I think I'm going to format the SSD, get all the stuff off of it from the old computer, because this was just basically an experiment to see if it would work without doing anything destructive. And I'll show you a little more about that SSD later, because it is such that SSDs are set up such that they're in a 2.5 or 3.5 inch form factor, which it sits right under here. But most of it's plastic. It's just a little, it's about half the size of a normal 2.5 inch bay, and it just sits in there. It's just framed with plastic. So I was able to take that out and just set it in there, and it fit, not like a glove really, but it fit such that I could close the bottom lid and boot it up, and well, here it is, spinning like an idiot. And this is a good time to comment on the state of PowerPC usage. I've seen videos on using one of these, and I'm unconvinced that it's viable. At least using a machine this old, perhaps a newer aluminum PowerBook, which I've owned a couple of those. A newer aluminum PowerBook, the highest speed 1.67 gigahertz with the most RAM, which I believe was 2 gigabytes. That may be usable, because it will also have Airport Extreme, and you won't have to have a stupid dongle to get on the wireless network anywhere. But I'm unconvinced that PowerPCs are usable this day and age, especially with the state of the internet. I have Firefox Sync, and I tried to sync, and this was a poor decision, I realize, but I tried to use Firefox Sync with 10.4 Fox, and it installed 3 or 4 extensions. There's all kinds of junk in here from my old computer, as you can tell. I installed 3 or 4 extensions, or it installed 3 or 4 extensions, which worked fine on my Intel machines, including a high DPI extension for Firefox that would increase, because I have a Retina MacBook Pro, which would give me more resolution in Firefox. But on a PowerBook, that's completely pointless and probably wastes a ton of memory, which is desperately needed on a machine of this vintage, especially when trying to use the modern web. And it also, I'm a Redditor, it loads up Res, the Reddit extension for browsers, which is completely pointless on this machine, because it then goes and tries to load every picture that comes up on my front page, which you'd see this just the entire time it was trying to do that. You just see the beach ball spin. It would sit there for, probably an hour and try to load all those things. So I tend to use Chrome a lot more anyway, so I removed those extensions. I don't know if that'll sync through or not, but it's still unusable. But this is also an 867 megahertz machine. I'm probably expecting too much of it. I think that's just going to come down to, this is not going to be a web browsing machine. Strangely enough, my old installer Quake 2 is on here, and I tell you what, this thing flies. I don't know what FPS it's running at, but especially on the SSD, now look, it's going to make it, this is fully playable, even with the trackpad. And this is my favorite first-person shooter of all time, which shows how much I really care about gaming, but I love Quake 2. And this is completely playable. I'm going to get my ass handed to me here because I'm not using my other hand because it's holding the phone. But just as a demonstration, the graphics on this thing are fantastic for this game only, I guess. I would like to put Quake 3 Arena on here and see how that runs. Excuse me, I'd like to put Quake 3 Arena on here and see how that runs. I'm curious to know, and I believe this is this is an ATI Radeon 9200. Well, that's helpful. Yeah. It'd be nice if I could use this to look it up. I think it's an ATI Radeon 9200 mobility. I could be incorrect. I'm not in any. This machine isn't in any condition to go on every Mac or whatever and look it up. But it's an ATI Radeon card, and I think it's got 64 megs of video RAM. Runs Quake 2 like a charm, and I'm very pleased with that, because even if it's just a Quake 2 machine, and it's the same deal with the iMac G4, which is one of my favorite desktop machines of all time. Even if it's a Quake 2 machine, I want it to have some use, because I just like using it. So I'm going to make a series of videos on this particular machine, on getting it up to snuff, getting it working well, so it doesn't sit here and do this crap. I don't know who that is. Jamala? I don't know who that is. Why is she singing? Why we care about her, but I want this machine to, let's get rid of Jamala here. Let's please go away. There's probably some sort of copyrighted material that So anyway, we're going to try to get this machine working and running in top condition. Max out the RAM, put a new installation of Leopard on here, and see what we can do. I would like also to have dual boot with OS 9, which would make this this machine in particular would be a great OS 9 machine. And I didn't really do any retro gaming on it back in the day, but I'm sure there's some games on here that would be really fun. Of the games, I'm sure there would be games for OS 9 that would be really fun to play. So this one will go on my Mac desk, because I have a desk dedicated to old Macs that I'll probably make a video about at some point. But this will go into sort of just a standby mode, and this will be just a great example of the PowerBook G4 Titanium and its ilk. So stay tuned for more videos on this machine, and I really appreciate you checking out TechThings. There will probably be another video besides this one, video series, dedicated to another piece of electronic kit that I found at the thrift. And that's kind of what this channel is going to consist of, is I find something cool at the thrift, usually very, very, very cheap. I pick it up, bring it home, and make a video on it, because I'm doing the first two steps already. I go to the thrift quite often and pick up crap, and it sits. And I go, oh, that's cool. So hopefully this will make doing that worthwhile. And I really appreciate you watching. Hopefully you get some enjoyment out of them.